I like problems. I really do. And actually, they help me learn. They help me achieve things. And it's not only me. In the entire world, there is a huge community of people that really admire problems. Let's take a look at 3 of these examples. This is Plum. And Plum, he wants to dance with his wife, but he's losing all of his strength because of a muscle disease. And this is Ronald. And together, they saw this problem as a challenge. This is Monique. And Monique wants to take pictures, put them into photo albums, share them with friends and family. And this is Catherine. She's actually in the room today. And together, they saw this problem as a challenge. And this is Laszlo. And Laszlo wants to game with his brother, but he has a cerebral palsy. And this is Anthony, who's also in the room today. And together, they saw this problem as a challenge. Now, what does these 3 problems, what does these 3 cases of the television program TEDxAntwerp have in common? Well, all of these makers, all of these people, they saw a problem, they took it, and they turned it into a challenge. And is it easy to tackle a challenge? Of course not. Is it always fun to do it? Actually, when it doesn't go as planned, it can be quite frustrating. But they will always learn. On the moment when they found a solution to a problem, when they cracked the case, they've learned something, and the satisfaction is enormous. And I'm quite sure that all of you also sometimes are puzzled, where you think, if I could solve this problem, if I could build this, I could really solve this problem. On that moment, you actually have identified a problem. And then you have 2 options. It can stay a problem, or you can turn it into a challenge. And I'm convinced that all of you can and should embrace such a challenge, because you will learn from it. That all of you can and should become makers and build things. You can really change the world by admiring problems and turning them into challenges. Now, let's go back to one of these makers of TEDxAntwerp. Let's go back to Anthony. Anthony has a garage, open garage, he calls it, because he opens his garage every Thursday evening, where fellow makers meet. And some of them come with a detailed plan on what they want to build. Some of them just come for inspiration. Some of them come to challenge their ideas. Sometimes they build something which is very useful. Sometimes they build something just because it's fun, because they can. But sometimes they build something which they've never built before, to challenge themselves, to learn, to acquire new skills. And they help each other in that process. So, for example, 5 years ago, when I was at Anthony's place, he was working on a rover robot which actually could bring sandwiches from the bakery. And at that moment, I was also, why? Because it's fun, because he could, because he wanted to learn. And at that moment, I was also looking for a challenge which could really challenge me to acquire new skills, to learn. And I started working on a 6-legged robot which could bring my drinks when I was in the garden. And what I know at that time, I know a bit about embedded programming, I know some concepts of wireless communication. And what I didn't know, well, that was exactly what I was going to find out. I had to start building and designing the body and the legs and so on. I didn't know anything about 3D design, so I had to ask around, I had to look on the internet, watch some movies and so on. Finally, I managed to design the body and the legs, quite simplistic. Then I had a model. I had to 3D print it. At that time, 5 years ago, 3D printing was not that familiar as it is now. So again, I had to ask around. And I found someone in the community of Anthony's Open Garage. And actually, we ended up building my own 3D printer by printing parts of my 3D printer on his 3D printer so I could 3D print my parts. But I learned a lot. Then I assembled all the parts, put the electronics in there, put the algorithms in there, and it didn't work at all. The motors were actually not strong enough, the legs were, the algorithm didn't work. So I had a problem, and I had to start learning again. I had to learn how to calculate what the right motor are. I had to learn much more about inverse kinetics, on how the legs had to walk, for example. Actually, I ended up building a simulation and a simulation program to test my algorithms before I put them in the hexapod. But after some time, actually after a few weeks of solving problems and a lot of playing Eurekas, I ended up with my son trying to imitate Gandalf stopping the Balrog. But anyway. Now, is this a useful robot? Probably not. Was it fun to build? Yes, of course. Did I learn a lot? For sure. And every problem, that robot didn't get there by giving up at the first problem. Every problem forced me to learn again, to enhance my solution and find a better solution at the end. And recently I heard somebody saying, for you it's a roadblock, for me it's a challenge. Or as a friend of mine, Kurt Beheid, he's also in the room today, once told me, being a maker is an attitude. And that's exactly what attracts me to this whole maker scene. Before they start working on a project, they already know they're going to have a lot of problems on their road. And by knowing that at some point where you reach a wall where normally you would stop, at that moment it's much easier to bring that wall down. Being a maker is about trying, failing, learning, adapting, and trying again. And most importantly, by sharing your project so other people can learn from you as well. And at the same time, with the spirit, yes, I can. I agree, in the beginning it's something like, yes, probably at some point I will be able to, but still, that's more or less the same. Now, I lead, for example, a group of 12 researchers, and I constantly try to motivate them to take problems and turn them into challenges. I try to challenge them to solve a problem, not by looking on how they can fail, but how they can transcend themselves. They're allowed to fail or to make a mistake, as long as they learn from it, and they don't make the same mistake twice. But still, the only failure is actually when you don't learn from a mistake, of course. Now, I noticed that the same attitude goes for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs also start from a problem, and they try to find the best solution for that problem, knowing that they're already going to have a lot of problems on their road. And it doesn't surprise me that a lot of makers do become entrepreneurs. Not all of them do, of course. It's not because you're a very good home cook that you have to open a restaurant. But I had the opportunity to be an active founder in 2 tech startups. The last one actually is building industrial Internet of Things solutions for the petrochemical industry. For example, sensors to monitor the position of manual valves. And what I saw is that a lot of tech startups, they really try to push their technology. But they forget the real problem of the customer. And by working together with the customer from the beginning, and by trying to tackle and to find a problem together with the customer and to make it a challenge together with them, we actually managed to get a lot of support from big companies in the beginning of our startup, showing that a startup can really be valuable, a small startup can really be valuable for big multinationals. But of course, even if you have identified the right problem with your customer and for your customer, you're still going to be prepared to have a lot of problems. And the way how you're going to tackle those problems, that dictates how successful your startup can be. Now, what I want you to remember is there is no such thing as a single finish line, as an ultimate goal. Life will always throw problems and opportunities to your project. And by embracing this maker attitude in everyday life, by being adaptive, by sharing with others, and by admiring problems and turning them into challenges, you can climb almost any mountain. Thank you.